The LCS has a new problem, and it looks like maybe too many teams want out at the same time. And as of tomorrow, from this recording, we might find out if the LCS has a solution. Also, yep, Worlds is over, and it was a dumpster fire for the side of Weibo. T1 destroyed them. We will be starting with that this episode. And Jojopyun to C9, maybe on hold, maybe not. We'll discuss where that is at right now in episode 146 of the Clown Fiesta podcast with Blue Jay and JNT250. Genter, we got to start with finals, man. Faker, once again, adding to his trophy collection. All of T1 just absolutely destroying Weibo. And I don't know if you agree, but for me, this whole series was mostly just about T1 stomping and not so much about Weibo not showing up. How do you feel about it?
Yeah, I mean, it was a stomp from top to bottom, basically. He won every single lane. They were in control pretty much every single minute of every single game. Maybe the only game that they didn't have, moments of not being in control was probably the game. I think it was game one early on when Weibo got a couple kills early on. But T1 still had the gold lead for the most part in that game, and that was off the back of like a really big lead for Zeus in the top lane, and that didn't slow down anytime soon because Zeus ran over the Shy, both against and with Aatrox. Somewhat poetic.
Yeah, I guess I said that it's not so much about Weibo not showing up, but honestly, you could kind of say that they didn't show up as well. It really was both teams at just both end of the spectrum as far as their performance, because the Shy did just get dumped on the whole damn series. He did not have a good series whatsoever. Zeus, uh, definitely Finals MVP, no doubt. He had a huge 3 games. Also, he had 2 Flame Horizons in 3 games. That is probably one of the biggest smackings we've ever seen from just one matchup in a finals. Um, Feel free to point out if there's something I'm missing, guys, because I'm sure we've had like how many finals now? Like 10, 13 range. I don't know how many seasons there are. So if I'm missing one, please feel to correct me in the comments in the comment section. But like this might be the biggest gapping we've ever seen in a finals. What do you think?
Well, just the only thing that I thought of, just based on what you were saying, was season 10 finals when it was Bin and Nuggery, just because usually
Mm,
those top lanes were kind of one sided. But just before we jump off that, like the only player or person you could say that maybe didn't show up for Weibo was the Shy. And honestly, it's pretty unfortunate because the Shy was one of the biggest reasons why Weibo was performing so well in the tournament. He the Shy was on for basically the entirety of Worlds. People are,
yeah.
LPL fans and Weibo fans are so used to the Shy being, I don't know if coin flip's not the right term, but they're used to the Shy having some very up and down performances. And I think more often than not, people expected the Shy to continue those same performances going into the World Championship. And the fact that he didn't have those up and down performances for the most part was really only up, I think was a big reason why Weibo advanced so far. And
Yeah.
you kind of when a certain player has been the driving force for why your team has been playing so well, and then that just suddenly disappears in the finals, your whole team is kind of just bound to fall apart because you're so reliant on this one formula that's been winning you a lot of games over the course of the last 2 months, basically, if you probably include the actual tournament plus the 3 weeks, 1 month of scrims leading up to it. It was just unfortunately a bit disappointing from the Shy.
You mentioned the coin flip title that people would maybe give to the Shy, and I think they would have in years past. I think especially at this World Finals, he was kind of putting that title to bed because he was having such a good tournament. But obviously, with the finals that he had, and you kind of see that he was so good just a week or two ago, and then so bad now. Like it's kind of pointing more back towards that coin flip title, perhaps. But on the other end, you just have to give a full bunch of credit to Zayas because yes, he dumped on the Shy, but he also dumped on all of Weibo. Like even when it came time for team fights, he just destroyed everyone. Starting with the Yone flank in it was in game one where he just flanked at the dragon fight, and yeah, that was really the I don't want to say the because it was only one game. It wasn't the end of the series, but it was the turning point of the series when T1 really started to just absolutely take over. So yeah, the Shy you could obviously give some criticism, but Zayas, come on, man, that guy just yeah he took the championship. He took it. He said this is mine.
I mean, for what it's worth, Zeus was probably the player that, T1 fans were probably the most concerned about going into the finals. Not only because the Shy had been playing so well, but also because Zeus, you know, in his career, it's kind of been one of his pretty much his only issue throughout his career so far is the fact that he has choked in a couple of these big finals, especially later in the series, and we didn't see any of that. And
Dude, quite the opposite.
it's great to see such a young player already kind of exercise those demons. And what is he? He's 19. Like this guy has still got at least another, 2 to 3 years, probably at the absolute top of his game. And I would not be surprised whatsoever till we see him continue this dominance into next year. And hopefully he can take his great performance in this finals and transition that to other good performances in future finals.
Yeah. Another player that I want to talk about, I guess maybe just T1's bot lane in general, but mostly I want to focus on Carrier just because I thought he also had a really good series. The bot lane, I guess game one, I don't know what Weibo was doing. Emily on cast said that like she liked Weibo's draft. I was quite the opposite personally. Um, I didn't like that they just gave over Renata. Honestly, just a winning lane for T1. And mind you, you could make the argument that you know what T1's bot lane wins lane almost no matter what. Maybe, but what they did was um they gave T1 the bot lane they wanted, picked both their solo lanes blind, and then allowed T1 to, ban 4 or 5, two more bot lane picks. To me, you're just asking to give over prio to T1, and that's how they took over game one. So JNT, I do not like to point the draft very often. I purposefully try to not do that. But to me, it was so obvious that T1 was just going to be able to take every objective in game one with bot lane prio, and that's exactly what they did, and that's what they've done so many times. So I don't know about you, but after I saw the game one draft, I was like, I know exactly what T1's going to do, and I know how this game is going to go. Even though they lost a couple of skirmishes early on in that game, it didn't matter because they were stacking so many objectives, and that's when Weibo had to go for that third drag, and then the Yone flank went off. Like T1 knew that they were going to have to contest a dragon eventually. Of course, they went over, and then Zeus punished them for it. So, like to me, if there was a way that you could draw how a game would go based off of how the draft went in game one, it just went exactly as it should have gone to plan. So that I don't know about you, but that was really surprising to me. I thought there was a huge draft gap in game one.
Yeah, I mean, it was pretty clear in the first game that Weibo's game plan was to pick a very strong top side, invest, their draft resources in that. Obviously, as you mentioned, by blind picking the solo laners and taking the Maokai jungle very early on, it was clear what Weibo wanted to do. They just didn't get enough done in that first 8 minutes of the game to warrant the insane deficit on the opposite side of the map. And
Yeah,
as you kind of mentioned, bot lane pretty much just went unchecked the entire time. Everybody understands that Senatom Kench is not, the greatest in lane pick. It really spikes very hard in the mid game, but they were down 40 CS almost 8 minutes into the game. Like the lane was just supremely over in bot side. And like I said, they didn't get ahead enough top side. And once Zeus made that one impactful play in the bot side river, where he got that 3-man ult and they killed 3 people and I think took the next dragon off of it, that was the game right then and there.
yeah. I guess just last thing on draft because I don't like to focus on draft, but I will just say we've talked so much this tournament about the power of blue side, and we even started to talk about it a little bit last week, about how like T1 is going to show people how to use red side. They did. They just well, I mean, maybe you could argue Weibo gave them the counter pick, so like sure, but T1 used it to their advantage and just stomped them without drafting them. So yeah, T1 was the only real team that's coming to mind anyways, that's standing out on how to use red side properly and just counter and just take over the early game and snowball.
Yeah, it was pretty interesting and kind of revealing to see Weibo stay on blue side both in game two and game three. It didn't necessarily surprise me that they stuck with blue side in game two, and they kind of ran back a similar comp. They sort of did the same exact thing in the early game with blinding the Aatrox top side, picking the Maokai early, and kind of they were probably under the expectation that the Shy was going to continue what he was doing for the rest of the tournament on Aatrox, which was going neutral in lane and having a really high impact in team fights. And I mean, not to, we already did talk about Zeus and Up Zeus, but he just annihilated the Shy in lane, like, but like both sides of the matchup. And I
Yeah, I
feel,
mean
I
the
feel like,
Gwen game,
I
the
feel like
Gwen game was
anytime,
disgusting.
I feel like anytime we talk about like a player or a team winning both sides of the matchup, when that is happening, it's almost impossible for the other team to do anything, regardless of
Yeah,
where that matchup may be, whether it's mid, top, or bot.
yeah. I think um the biggest game from Zeus was probably the Gwen game. That game was disgusting.
Oh
I mean,
yeah,
you could kind of
just
point to all of them, really, but I think the Gwen game was the biggest one. The game one
yeah.
with Yone was pretty cool too,
I mean,
but
you want to talk like specifically about like in lane dominating the shy 1v1. It's definitely that game. You know, in games 1 and game 3, Zeus made his impact more, you know, around the map other than specifically top lane. And obviously he did kill the shy on a couple of occasions, but game 2 was all about the lane phase, whereas games 1 and game 3 was just Zeus survived, he got into team fights well, and then just carried the game.
I'm sorry if I'm putting you on the spot here, but can you remember? I'm only asking you because you usually have a really good memory. Can you remember anything about like when G2 went to finals, or maybe even Fnatic, like when there was like 3-0s, if there was any like lopsided matchups, like the
Oh,
Zeus.
I mean, in Fnatic IG, the solo lanes were getting absolutely dogged on. So
And
yeah.
if I know it's so long ago, but like, would you be able to compare Zeus versus the Shy
Well,
now to back then?
it's pretty much what it was. You know, in season 8, the Shy was the one who was annihilating everybody, and in this
Maybe
final,
I'll
Zeus was the one annihilating the Shy. So, like I said, a
yeah.
little bit of poetic justice there.
Maybe I'll have to go back and watch that because my memory, like, that shit's way too far in the past to remember just how big of stomps they were. But I guess, yeah, what I'm trying to wonder is this the biggest gap we've ever seen in finals?
I
Um,
don't think so. I think it was Fnatic IG.
I'll have to go back and watch that.
Dude, I mean, just I'm remembering some of the KDAs that players had in that series. Like Bippo had like an Urgot game where he was like 0-8. There was a Caps Irelia game where he was like 0-8 or 0-7. I think one of the games that Soaz played, he was playing like Ornn and was like 0-8 maybe. I want to look it up even right now just to see.
There might even be something from like season 3 and 4 that we're forgetting. Again, this is where we use the comment section. Feel free to give us some reminders because I might have to go back and look at some of these series just to see, um, just to compare because I think it'd be really
Okay,
interesting.
yeah, game one Caps is 1-6 on Irelia. Okay, I guess I thought Whippo entered harder on Urgot, but he was only 2-8 on that one
Hmm.
Urgot game, and then
And
I
of
don't know.
course, kill score doesn't always indicate, like, it
Yeah,
doesn't
of
tell the full
course.
story, right? But yeah, at the end of the day, kill score is what you got, what a lot of people look at. So it's not completely irrelevant. Should we talk about Faker and his future plans?
Well, yeah.
Are we
I
saved?
mean, we are saved. Luckily, well, I mean, I guess I think I remember saying this a couple episodes ago. The fear was that Baker was going to win and then retire. I mean,
Yeah.
obviously that's a cool retirement. You know, you win a fourth world championship and right off into the sunset. But the fact that T1 won and he's looks like he's going to be continuing with the same roster as he said in the post game press conference, and I quote, "I will continue with T1 and have no plans to retire."
Oh God, yeah.
But
Let's
I guess
go.
the thing that's important to note about that is Zeus, Gumayushi, and Keria, all of their contracts expire at the end of this season. So presumably, just because they won the world championship, I would assume they're going to try to re-sign the whole roster. But if you know, who knows? Maybe one of those three players gets the bag from the LPL and decides
True.
to leave because we have seen that before. Even it's not just players who win the world championship, but certain Korean players who perform consistently very well internationally, more often than not, get the big money free agent offers from China. That's why we saw Ruler go to the LPL last year. That's why we saw, you know, everyone remembers the whole Korean exodus back in 2015 and you know, there's been spots in between. You know, there's countless examples of big LCK players moving to the LPL to collect a big contract. So I would have to
Yeah.
think though, like just based on my own personal opinion and just guessing, I would think that the whole team sticks together just purely based off of the all of the evidence that points to this team being so close, this T1 team that is. So I would bet against the team splitting up, but I would also I think it would be naive to ignore the possibility that one or two of these players could maybe leave.
Yeah. And for me, it's not just how this tournament went, which is obviously the biggest part. When you win a finals, that's the biggest part for a team wanting to stick together. But let's not forget, last year, even though they didn't win, they were considered the best team in the world, like hands down, right? Going into finals, no one thought DRX was going to beat them. And honestly, most people will still say that T1 should have won that series last year, that they just kind of maybe choked or whatever.
And that's the
Um,
crazy part is the Faker could have 5 world
yeah.
championships.
Yeah. Like there's a world where this roster would have won back to back world championships. So like to me it's not just like a 1 year, hey, maybe this team works together well. No, it's pretty damn clear this team works well together. So yeah, I think it makes a lot of sense for them to stick together. But you make a fair point. Money does influence people. It happens all the damn time, so that wouldn't be anything new. Anything else on finals that you want to highlight, or the future of T1 or anything like that?
Well, if everyone was paying attention during the games, you might notice this one small thing as to why T1 won this world championship.
Uh huh.
It was because every single T1 player had flash on F, whereas every
No,
single Weibo player had flash on D.
no,
And if we know anything, it's F is for flash. That's why T1
no.
won.
Fake news.
You're a flash on D'er?
Always been. Okay, here's why. Because
Bro.
I'll admit full noob, but this is when I first started playing League. Ping with G. G is right next to right next to F. Excuse me. I would misclick all the damn time. I would always accidentally flash when trying to just ping. So if it's another button over, then I can't waste my flash.
I mean,
Yeah, I
I
might
would also I'd be
accidentally.
lying if I said I didn't accidentally flash while trying to ping. So
There you go. So like, yeah, I might sometimes accidentally exhaust instead, or ignite or whatever. But yeah, I think you get my point.
I get your
I'm in
point, but
denial
the
about
world
this flash.
championship winners have flash on F, so that's all I got to say about that.
Oh god, that's hard to argue against. Yeah. What we really need is we need a full someone to do a full investigation, to go back all the way to season, well, not even season 1. Fuck season 1. That doesn't count. Fnatic didn't win worlds, don't at me. All the way since like all worlds really existed, and then get full data. And if we find out that more people won with flash on F, like as like a percentage or whatever, maybe I'll concede. But until then, until I'm proven wrong,
Well, I mean,
yeah.
Faker has won 4 times, and he has flash on F all of those times, and presumably all
Mhm.
the other former T1 players are following in his footsteps. So I would think that the
You're
majority of
pushing me
those
in a
guys have
corner
flash
here.
on F. So I don't know what to tell you other than flash goes on F.
You're pushing me into a corner here, Genter. The defense. I'm calling for a quick break. I don't know. Okay. Anything else on finals?
Well, just finals, or are we gonna like talk about other parts of worlds?
World, sure. Whatever. Jump in. Whatever you want.
Well, I was going to mention we were kind of discussing this before we just went live with this episode, but I had thought that they were going to give an award for the world's MVP, not just the finals MVP, but
Right.
I was thinking of like, trying to look it up and thinking about it just over the course of the past 15 minutes. I think I might have just made that up in my own head because I was trying to look it up and I see no evidence as to them awarding somebody for the world's, MVP. But
Why? I'm
anyways,
so convinced that they do though. Like, why do I think like I thought for sure they did, but they just don't.
I mean, regardless, we can still give our own personal world's MVPs.
Uh huh.
And luckily enough, we don't have to do too much searching elsewhere because the player that I have is on the World Championship winning roster.
Huh.
And no, it's not Faker. And
Uh
no, it's
huh.
not Zeus. But of
It's Caria.
course, it's Carrier.
Yeah.
He got the new jeans buff. He basically, reshaped the meta for the entirety of the World Championship. And he, like you said, he played a fantastic final. He played a fantastic semifinal series against JDG. Don't really remember what stuck out in the quarterfinals, but I'm just going to assume that he also played well there. I know it was the series against LNG, but I just can't think of it at the current moment. But fantastic semifinals, fantastic finals. Played very, very well. Obviously, in the Swiss stage, there was that game against Cloud9, the Bard game, where he basically 1v9'd. There was the 2-0 that they had against BLG, where Keria had a Tom Kench game where he was playing with Jinx and saved Gumayushi on like countless occasions. I think they came back from like a 6K gold deficit in that game. Carrier was just a complete monster this whole tournament. Widest champ pool of all the supports. What more can you say?
Yeah, no, I completely agree, actually. So the way I look at it is, I think over the course of the whole tournament, I would be able to argue that maybe Faker or Zayas had just as good as a tournament. Well, maybe not Zayas. Faker had just as good of a tournament. But to me, I think when it comes to your performance in finals, I think that obviously needs to be weighted more heavily. Faker had a great tournament. Just in finals, Kerry had a better series than Faker. And it, like, no offense to Faker, he had a great turn, but yeah. So to me, that it's just that reason alone that he edges out Faker. And Zayas had a amazing finals, but I would say the rest of the tournament, Faker and Carrier carried that team a little bit more. So yeah, I guess just more consistency out of Faker and Carrier, but at the end of the day, the finals was just Carrier taking over, I think. So I gotta give it to him.
Yeah. I for what it's worth, I will also say that I still considered Ben partially for this, but I do think some of the reason why I did go with Carrier is just because you do have to slightly weigh the knockout stage more, and you have to give more credit to the insane semifinals performance and the very good finals performance over the great Swiss stage from Bin and good quarterfinal series, but kind of fell
Yeah,
off in the
I
semifinals, and it's
winning the
just
tournament matters a lot too. Like
it,
you got to win.
yeah, Carrier's performances were just too hard to ignore, even though I think Bin was probably a pretty close second.
Yeah.
In my book, that
With
is.
Ben not even making it to finals and getting kind of dumped on for most of semis, yeah, I wouldn't be able to. I think he was the front runner going into semis, and then he kind of
In my opinion, Ben was the clear-cut best players up until the quarterfinals point. If
okay.
he were to stop it right there, he would have ran away with it.
Yeah. We're gonna talk more about worlds a little bit later in the episode. Talk about like the pregame ceremony and stuff like that. So we'll get to more world stuff later. For now, I want to focus on some LCS stuff because it sounds like there's going to be an announcement tomorrow. I think it's better to have the conversation now, though, about some of this LCS stuff. Before we do, I will remind people to subscribe if you want to support this podcast. The very easy way to do that is just to subscribe. Leave a comment, hit the like button. It helps us tremendously. And for those unaware, we are on multiple platforms: Spotify, Apple Podcasts. Just look for wherever you get podcast stuff. Look for the Clown Fiesta podcast. You will find us. Okay, now LCS, their new problem, JNT. They have too many teams that want to leave. We've kind of known for a little while that teams are looking to sell. Like there's multiple teams looking to sell. The problem is, I don't think there's enough buyers. I'm positive that there are people that are interested in buying an LCS spot. I just don't think they can keep up. I don't think there's enough for how many people are looking to get out. And that's a problem. And so I guess the rumor is that the LCS is considering dropping down to 8 teams and that they are going to announce tomorrow if they've decided to do so. That is the current rumor.
Yeah, it's pretty big news. Kind of honestly, it's kind of flying under the radar just a little bit because the World Championship was literally yesterday, and that's when this news kind of came out. So
Yeah.
definitely wouldn't blame people for not knowing this or not paying enough attention to it. But you know, looking at the landscape of the LCS, this is a very big deal. Number one, as you kind of mentioned, the numerous amount of teams that are looking to sell their spot. Looking back on previous off seasons in the LCS, we've kind of got the feeling that a couple teams, maybe every single off season, and when I say off season, I mean between the end of summer, end of world to the beginning of spring, not counting in between spring and summer MSI and whatnot. We do always hear these very minimal rumblings of this team is inquiring about what they could get for their spot, or oh, okay, Immortals has kind of been actively looking for the past year, and we know EG's kind of been actively looking for the past year, but there's been a couple other teams sprinkled in there that they're poking around. They're trying to figure out what the market might look like. But I feel like this offseason was the first offseason where we truly had multiple teams trying to sell their spot all at the same time. We have heard reports that up to 6 teams that are currently in the LCS were looking to sell their spot within the last year. Those being
Or we're
100
taking
Thieves.
offers, right?
Yeah, or like listening or taking offers. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, because that's a little bit different than looking to sell. Taking offers is
Yeah,
like,
but
yeah.
but this past offseason, we're up to 6 in total. There was TSM, obviously now became Shopify. There's Immortals, there's Evil Geniuses, there's Dignitas, there's Golden Guardians, and there's 100 Thieves.
Mm-hmm.
The only 4 that we haven't heard a single thing from, which is not very surprising, is Team Liquid, Cloud9, NRG, and FlyQuest. And why do I say that's not surprising? Well, one, it's because CLG just became NRG. 2, Team Liquid and Cloud9 are probably the only 2 relatively profitable LCS teams that we know of, and they have a lot of. Team Liquid more specifically has big backing through venture capitalists, and Cloud9 is just kind of the staple of the league. I feel like they're not going to go anywhere.
Let's also say that the word profitable might be doing some heavy lifting there. Let's just say,
Maybe, but
uh, we I guess what I'm trying to say is we don't know for sure that they're making profit, but they do have a brand that is actually recognized in the LCS. There's fandom there. Let's put it
well,
that
no,
way.
I do think that Steve did come out and say that Team Liquid was profitable this past year,
Oh,
and I think there's
perfect.
been, not that Cloud9 has came out and said it, but I think there's been a lot of rumors heavily indicating that C9 was one of the few profitable LCS teams.
Do we know if when Steve says that he's referring to Team Liquid in general or Team Liquid LCS?
Not sure. Good, very
Okay.
good point. Obviously, because as most people know, Team Liquid's involved in a number of other titles like CS:GO, Valorant, Smash, everything like that. So good
Yeah.
point. Obviously.
The biggest thing about this rumor, and why I think it's interesting to have this conversation now before we know whatever they're supposed to announce tomorrow. Maybe people are listening to this and they haven't announced anything. I don't know. But the biggest reason why I think it's actually good to have this conversation before the announcement is because I think it really kind of paints the pure panic in my eyes, of like, we are last second just trying to make a decision because we don't know what to do. What I'm wondering is, why is this happening now? Like, shouldn't it have? It's been known for some time that teams have wanted to get out now. It feels like something must have happened, and I don't know what that is, but something must have happened where all of a sudden the LCS panicked and said, "Oh crap, we don't have enough teams that want into the league with too many teams trying to get out, and so we're just going to panic and get rid of two spots." Like, I don't, or maybe they're thinking this is our opportunity to go down to 8 teams. Maybe for a while they've wanted only 8 teams, and they're thinking this is our shot to actually make that happen. I don't know, but like, it's so weird, and like, why wouldn't this have been in the works, not 2 days before all of the LCS contracts expire and players are trying to sign to teams? Like, this to me is so shit for some of the players that think they have a spot and might just be told tomorrow, like, yeah, your team isn't existing anymore. And by the way, every other role, or the role that you play, every other spot is filled. Like, that might just be shit for like Licorice, for example, if Golden Guardians decides they're out. So yeah, there's lots of reasons for panic, if I have to be blunt.
Yeah, it's definitely an interesting conversation, as you mentioned. Why is this happening? And kind of in addition to that, why is this happening right now? Because the majority of LCS teams have not been competing since the end of August, basically. 6 LCS teams have not been doing anything. And I say six, it's even more than that, actually. But at the very minimum, 6 teams have not been doing anything since August the 20th. And then Golden Guardians obviously got eliminated early on in October. And, other teams like C9 Energy and Team Liquid got eliminated, in mid October, late October, whatnot. Uh, but what was I just lost my train of thought there.
While you're thinking of that, I just want to. Well, I guess what the question that I wanted to bring up was: is this good news? Like, are we happy that it could go down to 8 teams? Because I get there's pros and cons, right? The bad news is too many teams want out. That I can't paint that as good news that everyone wants to leave the league. The good news is that I've gone on many times to you, JNT. I've gone on rants about how I think the LCS product is really difficult to consume. If you were to make a 5 hour broadcast down to four, I think that's just easier to consume. That's one less hour that you're asking people to take time out of their day to watch. So, still a long ass broadcast trying to get people to watch 4 hours of League of Legends, but far easier. So, like, that's good, right?
Yeah, and I mean, I guess one of the downsides maybe is that with less teams, you're kind of giving less opportunity. There's less chances for new teams, new orgs, new people to get involved in the league because it
Right.
requires, if there's a 1 in 10 chance that you can acquire a spot during any given off season, well, now that's only a 1 in 8 chance. And once again,
Yeah.
that all depends on who's wanting and willing to sell because, like I was kind of illustrating earlier, we have a couple teams now that have sort of locked themselves in for the foreseeable future. Shopify, NRG, C9TL, and FlyQuest. But you look at
And
teams that have kind of been, for lack of a better term, doing the minimum for a couple of years now. I'm looking at your Dignitas, your Immortals, your Evil Geniuses. Maybe we can throw Golden Guardians into this conversation. And I guess the point that I was originally sort of trying to outline was you look at the free agency period and what has been going on in the LCS. It feels like with certain teams, we have a lot of activity with teams nailing down their rosters and figuring out what they want to do moving into 2024. But there's a couple instances of teams where they have made zero to minimal progress at all on their rosters moving into 2024. And I wonder if that is the reason why this is being brought up, or as you mentioned, is this something that was considered or even discussed, when the conclusion of the LCS would have happened in late August, early September? Because, I mean, we'll talk about LCS free agency in a few minutes here, but Golden Guardians has not made a single, or there's not been any rumored spots on their roster whatsoever. The roster currently stands completely blank. And you look at the EG roster, and it's basically the only people that are on that are people that they've brought up from EG challengers to,
yeah.
if anything, I would just say temporarily fill those spots because we've known that EG is going completely budget for the last year and a half now.
Yeah, and the only news that we've gotten from Golden Guardians that their players are leaving, right? So
Yeah.
the rumor is that Gory's not coming back to the LCS, although that he could still go to a team. It's just the rumor at the moment is that he's not, and then who he's going somewhere else, and then Rivers already gone to 100 Thieves as we figured out last week, I think.
Hmm.
So yeah, they have nobody. So that's why I think a lot of people are pointing to that team as being one of the teams that wants to leave. But it's just like there's too many, right? Um, I guess this is a fair time to ask the question, J&T. Was franchising a failure?
I think I think yes. I think the answer to that question is yes at this point.
Me too.
I guess part of the a couple of the reasons why I say yes was the idea. Well, I guess the initial idea of franchising was to have permanent partners within the league that were going to stick around for the long term, and we were hopefully not going to be seeing the continuous turnover that we traditionally saw at the bottom of the LCS. Obviously, that came in various forms, whether it was promotion or relegation tournament, or just
Hmm.
the players at the bottom of the standings naturally just got filtered out of the league more often than they did during the era of franchising. I feel like one of the parts of the this franchising era that people have just really not liked, especially when it comes to a team building perspective and a talent development perspective, is a lot of these players, veteran players, just kept getting recycled into different teams. And yes, there were some very good examples of players who were playing at a high level at one point, dropped down, they stuck around in the league, and they ended up sort of getting back to the top. You know, you look at your Licorice, your Stixay, your Huhi, maybe throw also in like a Wild Turtle potentially. Like, you know, he had some good moments and bad moments, but there's a litany of other players who stuck around in the league for way too long. And, you know, I think a lot of people would argue we're holding up other spots for maybe more deserving NA players. So when it comes to that perspective, I would say yes. And then when it comes to teams sticking around for the foreseeable future, how many of the teams that were initially announced to be franchised into the LCS, how many of those are still actually here? Optic is no longer here. Clutch Gaming is no longer here. CLG is no longer here.
Echo Fox, were
Echo
they part of
Fox is
it?
no longer here. Yep, they were. Echo Fox no longer here. I don't know if I'm missing anybody else because 100
Golden
Thieves.
Guardians on the way out, probably, possibly.
Yeah. They would have been a new team that came in at the time, but you know, for the term permanent partner, we had like 4 of those teams leave in 2 years. Like
There's not a lot of permanence.
yeah, none whatsoever. And even at that, despite those initial teams that have been gone from franchising, some of the ones who have come back in the short term, your Immortals and your Evil Geniuses. Evil Geniuses came back in what season 10 and Immortals also came back in season 10. There are also 2 of these 2 teams that might be rumored to be gone.
Yeah.
So
So
what stability apart from your top 4 or 5 teams do you really have with this franchising model that was preaching about stability and a profitable league?
yeah. So I agree with the notion that franchising has been a failure. I just when I hear people talk about this, I hear nothing but all things bad around franchising. Um and I think there was some good things about franchising, they just kind of expired. So what do I mean by that? One of the good things about franchising was that a team could lock down a sponsor for multiple years, right? You didn't wonder if that team was going to get relegated. Well, the reason that kind of expired is because with the league not making any money, they're not keeping sponsors anyways, right? So like that's a so yeah, you were able to keep sponsors in theory, but you're not in practicality for other reasons. Teams were able to invest in academy squads, right? Build up talent. What happened to the academy teams? They're gone. Everyone got rid of them. So it's like some of the positives that came with franchising are not around anyways, and it's for different reasons. So like there's fewer and fewer things to point to as to why franchising was a success at one point. And that's doing some heavy lifting saying was. A lot of those things are just gone. And at the end of the day, we mentioned there's so many teams that just want out. So if you don't have an academy teams anymore, sponsors are dropping anyways. Everyone's looking to claw out and to sell, sell, sell. Where is the success of franchising?
Yeah,
It's
it's
hard
not
to,
very existent.
yeah. It very much is. And one of the other issues that we've dealt with, and we've been talking about this for so long now, is that with all the VC money that was coming in with franchising, people just went and bought all the really good Korean players that came in, and we know how that went. Mind you, there are some really good Korean players in our league. I don't want to pretend like there's not. but so many times we would get them, they would boomerang right back after 1 year, right? And so like all this time that you've invested in building up a player's brand and just their personality and all that just goes the wayside. We've heard Travis Gafford mention that many times. You and I are big agreeers on that sentiment. So I guess I'm going on here, but all this to say that there's fewer and fewer and fewer things to hold on to call franchising a success. And when everyone wants out and none of the things that were supposed to be a success in the first place are actually working, it's really difficult to say that franchising was not a failure.
Yeah, it's there's not a lot of like when you try to break down the pros and cons. There's really very few pros that you can point to that are carrying any weight whatsoever.
Maybe, and this is again less true now because they got rid of the challenger teams. But you could argue that when challengers or academy teams did exist, that allowed players like Palafox and Dokla and all the and contracts, the NRG guys, they had a place to play so that they were able to make it back, right? I feel like that was one of the benefits of franchising. So like it did work at one point,
Yeah,
and there were a bunch of sponsorships coming in at one point. So like it's not to say that franchising completely failed because I would argue it was working pretty well for the first few years. Just in the long run, it didn't.
yeah. Definitely in the first couple years, I think you did see some change for the good, but I think slowly don't know if the LCS sort of lost that franchising identity or if just outside factors were kind of forcing the league to shift. And obviously, we have to talk about the financial stresses that a lot of these teams were under. Kind of sort of some of that started with, COVID and everything like that. But even post COVID, teams are still struggling. So you really wonder, is that a
Yeah.
byproduct of franchising or is that a byproduct of just teams and the decisions that have been made over the course of the last 5 years just not working out?
Couple things that I want to talk about. So let's pretend that they announce tomorrow, nope, we're sticking with 10 teams, we're not getting rid of anyone. Does it worry you at all? Because obviously it worries me. Does it worry you at all that we have more teams just coasting along in our league, right? That are just like, oh, we thought that you guys were going to drop us, so we didn't really think that we were making a roster, and so they just put up bare minimum rosters, as we've seen other teams do. And then we have not like, first of all, how cursed is it that if we rewind 1 year ago and we were told there would be two less LCS teams, we would have thought, oh, Dig and Immortals are gone. But how cursed is it that we might have two less teams and Immortals and Dig might still be part of the league?
It's true. I mean, if you're looking purely at the free agency activity in the last 1 to 2 months, you would argue that, that those Dig and Immortals have
Those
not been
teams are
those two
sticking
teams.
around.
It's been Evil Geniuses and Golden Guardians that have been doing the bare minimum. So
But anyways, sorry. Back to the question though. Does that worry you that these teams are just going to coast and just vibe and hang out?
it's definitely an issue for the short term. I think that for Spring Split, it will definitely show itself. But I think that at the same time, once the Spring Split happens, and you do have like not every team at the bottom of the standings can be 10th place. Like some of these teams
Hmm.
are going to be 6th place, 7th place, 8th place, and hopefully, and like I say, hopefully, that would give the team owners, general managers, management, whatever, it would kind of give them the inkling that, oh, well, maybe I actually do have a roster that can compete. And let's maybe put a little bit more into this going to summer. Like, we kind of know what our building blocks are. We can get maybe a big name for the start of summer split and kind of go from there. But that's hope. That's wishful thinking right there. But
Yeah.
uh, it's
Optimism.
definitely looking more and more like teams are kind of just mailing it in, which is obviously not a good thing.
And look, that might just not be true. There's a world where maybe Golden Guardians has a full roster ready to go, and they just haven't announced it yet, right? In a couple of days, the free agency should really have actually started, and teams should actually start signing people. So maybe everything's fine, and maybe Licorice has a team, and maybe all these guys that we think deserve teams will have teams. Maybe it's looking very grim. Um, if they decide to keep 10 teams and not all the teams want to be in it. We've seen what that looks like. Immortals has been one of those teams. I don't want to have two or three other Immortals squads in the league, plus one counting Immortals themselves. Like that would be a big problem. Last thing for me, anyways, that I wanted to bring up would be, let's say we do take away two teams, and now we've got eight. What does a regular season look like? What does a split look like? Because you always played each team twice, you'd have 18 games. If you're playing every other team twice now with only 7 opponents, you're only playing 14 games. Does
Yeah,
that bother you going down to 14 games from 18?
definitely yes. If the
Because you would have 2 less weeks of LCS?
I mean, if the league were to decrease to 8 teams, I would. I mean, I would just think you'd have to increase the number of games being played during the regular season, and that would likely result in some type of a format change for the regular season and the standings and whatnot. Because if you were to just take the exact same format as it currently is, a best of one round robin, that in this case maybe you complete 3 times, so you play for a total of 21 games. That would make sense, but also who knows? Maybe 8 teams would actually give us the opportunity to move to best of 3 regular season. I would say if we were to be able to get best of 3 regular season with 8 teams, I could be down. Like that actually might be a change that I could see them making and be like, this is the rationale we're doing it for, and I would maybe agree with that.
I'm very hesitant to see what a best of 3 thing looks like because
Well, we already saw it.
what are you talking about, like season 6?
Yeah, season 6, 7.
Yeah, see, to me, that was not successful. You did not have there was not a lot of, like, viewership really struggled there.
Well, but
Mind
that's
you,
because you
they
have
were
10
playing
teams, so maybe you don't have to go dual stream in that.
they were yeah, I was gonna say, they were playing on 2 different streams at the same time, so that is something that is completely different. However, like I mentioned earlier, where, like, you bring a 5-hour broadcast down to 4, with best of 3s, you could have, like, a 6-hour broadcast if you're doing, like, 2 per day. You also don't know if they're gonna go on weekends again. We hope that they somehow bring the LCS back to weekends, but if
I
not
doubt that's happening. Everything that they
and
everything that they said, especially in this like executive interview that they had with like some 30-minute video, they once again reiterated the point that they don't want to have overlapping matches like leagues and whatnot. So
Sure, sure. But that doesn't necessarily mean that it can't go back on weekends. I'm not saying they will, but I'm just saying that there is maybe a world where it's like, oh, this they just I don't know, just 2 random months. Like March, April is Valorant and then May, June is LCS or something. I'm just throwing out random times. I don't know. What else was I going to say? I lost my train of thought.
well, one just well maybe you regather your thoughts. One another thing, don't want to sidetrack us here, but one thing to point to the bad of 8 teams is I feel like going down to 8 teams, and I've said this before, is a heavy indication that the LCS is going to be demoted to a non-major region.
Yeah, I don't think so. I think so. Sorry, did I cut you off? Go ahead if you had more to
Well,
say.
I think the proof is just that there is no other league in the world that has 8 teams that is considered a major region. Every single league and every single region that has an 8 team league is a minor region.
Yep. So that's true. But just for me, I don't look at a team as being a major or minor region based off the number of teams they have. To me, it's based off of their performance, right? North
And
America
they
and
haven't had
Europe,
good
even though
performances.
no, but still, they do outperform all the other minor regions by far in general, right? Of course, every once in a while, a minor region comes along and beats one of the majors, sure. But if they keep being like the top four, like let's say the LCK, because LCK is having like esports winter as well. Let's say they have 2 teams that are losing money and they go down to 8 teams. Like, would we call the LCK a minor region now? No, they still probably win worlds, even though they just have 8 teams, right? So that's why, like to me, I don't look at it as oh, how many teams do you have? Oh, and because you have this much, you're a minor region or you're a major region. I just look at like the performances of the leagues.
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't trying to say that that's the end all be all to being a minor region, but you know, when you're talking about international performance, if we remove Cloud9 2018 and NRG 2023, NA international performances have been hot garbage for 6 years in a row. There's been nothing to write home about NA internationally except for C9 in 2018 and NRG in 2023.
Yeah.
Not one thing to be positive about when it came to NA's outlook internationally.
Yeah. Fair enough, but I mean that still is something rather than nothing.
Yeah.
I want to know, people in the live chat right now or comment section. I want to know what people think about should North America be a minor region if they had 8 teams. Like, I guess what I want to know is, does the number of teams matter to you or not when you look at like what a major and minor region team is? Because as far as I know, there is no actual definition. Is there?
Uh, what do you mean no
Like,
definition?
has Riot ever said like this is a this is what defines being a minor region? This is
No,
what
I
defines
don't.
being a major. They haven't ever. It's just like this is major, this is minor. That's kind of it, as far as I know.
Well, yeah, from what I can remember, when the LMS moved from a major to a minor region, I think that was just like up to Riot's discretion. Like they basically chose that when the LMS became the PCS, they were no longer a major region.
Hmm.
and
Interesting. And that
and
had nothing to
not
do with their
to
performance, or
well, not to not to use the same point again, but when that happened, they went from 10 to 8 teams. Like
yeah, okay. So no, but
that went hand in hand with
no, but
that.
that's a good point to bring up though, because it doesn't matter what I think is a minor or a major region team. It doesn't matter what you think. It matters what Riot thinks.
Yeah.
So if when they went from 10 to 8 and then they considered them a minor region team, maybe that's how Riot views it. And then maybe Riot does say, you know what, LCS, you guys got 8 teams. You're a minor region.
Mm.
Okay. At the end of the day, does it matter that much if we are or are not?
I mean, no, it doesn't really matter, but it's just kind of a kick in the gut. Like it's like, oh man, like we're really a minor region now, huh?
It's even better when NRG beats G2. Beast.
Yeah,
Got beat by a minor region.
I guess, but presumably becoming a minor region would automatically reduce the number of world slots that North America would be given. Because I think
Luxian,
if I
sorry, go
re-
ahead.
well, I think if I remember correctly, when the LMS did get bumped down to a minor region, they still had 3 teams that advanced to the World Championship, exactly like I believe they had in previous years. However, one of those teams automatically dropped into the play-in tournament, and I think 2 advanced. And then over the course of the next year, maybe it was 2, they then got reduced to 2 teams because of those performances.
Mm,
So, I mean, right now, North America has 3+1, kind of with the World's Qualifier Series, and I could
yeah.
easily see that if we drop to 8 teams, it would then become the 2+1. Whereas, you get 2 teams, they'd either both go directly main stage, maybe one goes main stage, one goes play-in, and then one goes into the World Qualifier Series.
Yeah, Lucky's saying they don't call it minor region anymore. I don't think they do. What is it
Oh no,
called? Is it like emerging or
it's
something?
emerging region, but
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Which
miss me with that.
potato, potato.
I mean, I think it was just like literally just a positive language change. I think that was literally the only reason for that.
But major regions are still called majors, right?
Yeah, they are.
Okay. Well, I mean, you would just think the opposite. Like, anyway,
From what I remember, it was purely just to use like a better sounding language, like a
hmm.
better sounding term.
What do you think? The one thing Luxy said that made me laugh was 8 team playoffs with 8 teams. They wouldn't, right?
That'd be a
There's
fucking
no,
joke. That would be a
there's
fucking
no,
joke.
there's no shot. I really hope that's not the case. That would be okay. That's one good way of making people look at you as a minor region. Everyone makes the playoffs, like it's already pretty. People already make fun of
Yeah,
eight
like
teams making
the
playoffs to
18
begin
playoff
with.
is already a joke, and if you were to have 8 teams where every single team made the playoffs, like oh my god, it would just be laughable.
I don't think it's that much of a joke, but I could see why people do think it is. But I like it. Anyways, I've enjoyed our 8 team format, even though I totally get why people make fun of it. Anything else on the LCS and their new problem?
It won't be the last one.
Oh god, that's so true. Janty kicking me right in the truth. Okay. Should we go NA free agency?
There have been some more moves. Like I said, if we just, I'll read this out for the audio only people, but obviously for the people who are watching the YouTube video, you can see on screen there has been a couple changes to some of these rosters. The most important, and I would say the biggest one over the course of the last week, was Huhi rejoining with his former bot lane partner FBI, joining the
Oh god,
championship-winning
yeah.
NRG squad, and I feel like we pointed this out on multiple occasions throughout both the summer split, the playoffs, and the World Championship. Ignar was kind of one of the underperformers of the team. He had a really good finals, but I think for the most
Hmm.
part, if we were to point to, who could potentially be holding NRG back, I think the 2 names that people talked about the most were Ignar and Dokla.
Hmm.
And we did kind of learn about a week ago that there was going to be a couple changes made to NRG, where a lot of people thought that they were just going to run back the same roster, but they found an upgrade for support, straight upgrade, and that's can only be good for NRG moving forward.
I'm a big Huhi fan, but I think it's fair to make an argument that it's not an upgrade. I do think in general, Huhi had a better year, but you have to realize that when games really mattered, like finals, like you mentioned, or even at Worlds, Ignar performed great. And Huhi kind of fell apart with the rest of Golden Guardians in their series against BDS.
Yeah,
So you could argue that even though Huhi had a really good year from like January all the way to like July or whatever, um, when the games mattered most, Ignar was better.
yeah,
So I personally feel better just because I know FBI and Huhi have played together before, and I think that that's really good. I don't think it's that clear cut that it's an upgrade, if that makes sense.
yeah. I mean, I can't disagree with that. So you're definitely not wrong. But I think overall consistency, looking at an entirety of 2 LCS splits plus the potential of international competition. I think it's an upgrade.
You know why else it's an upgrade? Do you know? You should know where I'm going with this.
No, I'm not sure.
The content, baby.
Oh, of
Huhi
course.
mixed with
Yeah.
that. Come on, let's
Yeah.
go.
We're gonna need
Energy
the
content.
the NRG mic checks are gonna be insta click for you now, huh?
Oh, for sure. They've already been kind of in, but like, yeah, they're even better now, I guess. Um, I don't want to go on this for too long, but can we actually just say real quick that like Energy's content has been really good. Like, there haven't hasn't been much for them to do since joining the league, right? They joined the league and they're just like, oh yeah, you guys see all you CLG people, just keep doing your thing. But then they actually just started making content around it. They're building a really good brand for themselves just to start. Like, I shouldn't say building a brand because NRG's already existed, but do you get what I'm trying to say here?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
they're cementing themselves as a fan favorite really quickly. And yes, winning helps with that, but content does too. So, like, I guess we don't see a lot of teams come into the league and really do all that much. Um, Shout out to NRG for doing that.
Well, we've used this example like countless times. Obviously, the best way to become popular is winning, but to retain those fans and to keep those fans, on your side when your team isn't doing as well, you generate that fandom by doing these types of content. Like
You know,
part of the reason why everybody points to the downfall of TSM is they specifically made their brand like it was all about winning. Like they fully did not invest. I mean, I guess that's incorrect. I shouldn't say. Towards the beginning of the LCS and the early days of TSM, they definitely invested a lot more in content and
yes.
sort of building fandom, and I think that is part of the reason why TSM became so successful. But at a certain
TSM
point,
Legends was popping off at one
it
point.
was I've said this multiple times. I loved hate watching TSM Legends back in the day. Like when I was just a super super diehard C9 fan, I hated the fuck out of TSM. Anytime they lost, I was always insta clicking TSM Legends. But and honestly, kind of when the franchising period started, TSM really they didn't commit to that stuff as hard. They clearly didn't put as much of an effort into things outside of the Rift. And when they fell off a cliff, when it came to their performance, it was pretty clear that a lot of those fans just didn't necessarily stick around. They moved
Yeah.
elsewhere. Or if anything, they kind of just became fans of those players only. And then when those players moved to other teams, that fandom went with them. Like Bjergsen brought a lot of fans over to TL and 100 Thieves when he joined those teams. Doublet brought a shit ton of fans to Team Liquid when he went there. You know?
I agree. Okay, what's the other big moves? Jensen, big move actually.
Yeah,
Let's go.
I was gonna say FlyQuest. They finally rounded out their roster. We obviously thought that they were going to be going with an import mid, but they landed on Jensen, who is I think he has a green card, so he counts for an NA resident. But it was also said in the Sheep Esports article that both Nemesis and Larson were considered for the team, and also there was a possibility that if none of those worked out, they were going to field an ERL mid laner. And
Yeah,
they pointed out the fact that they had Takui not too long ago, so that's kind of a scene that they're somewhat familiar with.
God, that would have been sick. I mean, don't get me wrong, I love Jensen, but Tukui comes back. Let's go. That would have been beast. Okay, I'm happy with the Jensen move. I'm not going to pretend like I'm happy with it because of how good he was last year. I don't think Jensen had a good year. I'll be completely honest with that. I'm just a really big Jensen fan, and I really, if there's an angle for Jensen to have a bounce back, FlyQuest is a really good team to have that happen with. So I'm really excited about that. I would have thought TL would have been great for that as well, but it seems like that's not happening. Who knows what TL's doing still? We'll maybe find out in a couple of days. But if there's an opportunity for Jensen to bounce back, wouldn't this be it?
Yeah, it's definitely a very solid roster that he's joining. Mostly because whenever we see Jensen with a very strong early game dominant jungler, that's when Jensen's at his best. When he was playing on Cloud9 with Blabber, I guess I would say part one with the whole Zillion Kindred thing, and then when he was playing with Cloud9 on Blabber part two in the summer of 2022, and then you look at his time on Team Liquid when he had I guess I wouldn't describe Xmithy as a very strong early game jungler, but he was just a pure facilitator and just allowing, propping up Jensen basically. And I think Inspired is going to help Jensen very much with that, with his performances going into 2024 comparing to 2023.
I want you to put your C9 hat on because you could do so easily. Is this good news from a C9 fan point of view? Are you like, yes, Jensen didn't have that good of a year. I think FlyQuest is less of a threat with him, or are you like, shit, like this roster's kind of scary. I'm worried about this team maybe contesting Cloud9 for championship along with NRG, of course. Like, is there how do you feel about it from the C9 fandom side of things?
I don't know. I guess I don't think it really mattered to begin with.
Hmm.
I don't think there was any mid laner that Lycos was probably going to sign that was going to make them like a big threat. Like it was going to elevate them to be like the number one team to go at. Like I think you still have to lean towards NRG still for the time being. The
Yeah,
way
as
that
the bigger.
the way that I see it, NRG, they had the best Worlds performance, they had the best playoffs performance, and they just made an upgrade to their roster. And Cloud9 fell apart at the end of the playoffs. They fell apart at the end of Worlds. And yes, they are presumably upgrading their roster, but we still don't know what that's going to look like.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
I don't think that the Jensen signing props them up over C9 or NRG. But I would say that, if anything, a player like Larson, yes, would have been a bigger upgrade than a
That's where I was
Jensen.
going with that. Okay, that's what I was trying to get at was okay. So you think Lars? I think
Yeah.
I agree
Or
honestly.
if
As
they did
far as
another Korean mid laner of some form.
depends though, because that could be really. You could be Quid. It could be Crown.
I
I
could
think that's
be
enough already to make my point.
true.
It could be somebody really good too. Okay. What else we got?
Well, I think I was going to go to 100 Thieves next because
Go for it.
they pretty much got their whole roster together in the last 9 days. It feels like we already
Mm-hmm.
knew last week that River was going to be joining the squad, and at the time he was the only move that we really had confidence in moving forward. Obviously, Quid was kind of floated out there that he could remain with 100 Thieves, but everyone wasn't exactly sure if that was going to happen. But it's now been rumored and confirmed that he's going to be staying on the roster, that Sniper is also going to be promoted to the starting top laner spot, and that they're signing Meech and Ayla formerly from EG and Meech formerly from DSG, to join the squad. And kind of looks like that 100 Thieves is going, I mean, we kind of knew that they were going a bit budget, but at least they're going budget in terms of North American and talent development, as opposed to just recycling veterans, kind of like Immortals over there.
Like okay, yeah. Immortals is some recycled veterans,
But I mean, like,
but like
my point being here is when you talk about like a team and what a lot of North American fans have been like banging against the walls for teams to do is what 100 Thieves is doing right here.
you
I think both Shopify and 100 Thieves are really going at this next season with the right mindset in terms of the financial commitment that they've made and the goals that they probably have. I think both of those teams are doing a really good job, and I guess I shouldn't say they're doing a really good job. They're taking their team in a good direction, a positive direction.
Yeah, the biggest thing that like excites me about the 100 Thieves roster, it's not mid, bot, or support, even though like I think all those players have potential. Well, maybe not Quid. Quid was actually pretty shit, but maybe their bot lane has potential to surprise and really pop off. I think the hype needs to be with Sniper. Sniper has been talked about for how many years now? The
Three,
meme is like this is
three,
like the
yeah.
fifth year in a row that he's turning 13 is like the
Oh
meme,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
Like he's finally old enough to play in the LCS. This guy's been talked about forever. Is there ever or has there ever been this much anticipation for one player joining the LCS? There's no way, right?
Sorry, say that again. I got distracted.
Has there ever been this much anticipation for one player to join the league?
Hmm.
This has been like 4 years or 5 or whatever.
Yeah, it's probably. I'm
Right? He hit
trying to
Challenger when he was 12 and
I'm trying
everyone
to
was
think of
talking about him when
any
he was
other
12.
names that stand out. I'm not sure.
Jojo was hyped, but like it was pretty quick transition, right? Like it
Yeah.
was like we knew pretty quickly that he was going in and then there was not like this 3 or 4 year wait for Jojo to join.
It's difficult to say because I feel like a lot of the NA rookies that have popped off in recent memory, they've popped off because they've just come into the league and kind of taken the league by storm. And you point to the Jojopyuns, the Dannies. We haven't really had those European types of players that are involved in the scene for many, many years before they come into the league, and then they're already like supposed to be very good talent. That's part of the reason why you see a lot of LEC teams, taking players from regions like the LFL and whatnot. It's because there's a pretty proven track record that you play well in that league, you're going to play well in the LEC. And in recent years, we've kind of lost that vehicle of academy/challenger for players to really show their skills and give themselves, hype and prop themselves up going into the start of their LCS career. Like Sniper only played in challengers. I mean, I don't even know if it was challenger. He only played in amateur for like I think a year on 100 Thieves, and it's kind of just been chilling on the sidelines for like the last year now.
Hmm. And then not just Sniper, but I think Sniper playing with River is one
Oh,
of the reasons why I'm excited for that because River had a great year. I want to see him. Look, I know this is wishful thinking, guys. I want to see Huni Rainover vibes, like where this is where we play. We play to the top side and we absolutely take over. That's the dream, right?
yeah.
I'm not saying I'm expecting that to happen, but that's what you want when you see this new young rookie come in who's supposed to be hella hyped, and then he's put with one of our best junglers. Let's go! I want to see some dominance on the top side of the map.
Yeah, honestly,
You're
that's
laughing at chat. I see you
yeah,
laughing.
yeah,
You're
yeah.
laughing.
Keith McBrief.
Yeah, someone was hyping up Keith. I don't think that was a serious suggestion. um, what else do we got to talk about? There's a few other
Um,
things.
well, yeah, there's Dignitas. They made another signing. They have Dove in the mid lane, who formerly was playing in the LPL last year on IG, was the starter in Spring Split, but actually got benched in Summer Split. And before that, I believe, was playing in the LCK for a number of years, more specifically on Live Sandbox. And I want to say he played on DRX also.
Hmm.
I'm pretty sure about that.
I don't know anything about him. It's just like oh, whatever to me,
Yeah, he's a slightly below average LCK mid laner. That's the impression that I have. He's kind of
dude.
like a Gory.
Isn't that what people said about Quid, or was Quid Academy? He was
Koba's
below
Academy.
average in Academy.
Well, he was below
Okay,
he was
so
below Chovy. Like from what I like when I remember we were talking about Quid in beginning of Summer Split. The only reason I was hyping him up or even talking about him whatsoever is that, like this guy could be good. It's because he was subbing for Chovy.
it's just like if that's the best thing we've got about a guy is like who's playing above him rather than what he actually does. I don't know. But anyway, people in the chat are asking about Jojo Sandbox, and I think it's a good time to get into that discussion.
Yeah.
We thought for sure Jojo was locked into Cloud9, and although it's still looking that way, it looks like Sandbox at the last second was like, hey, let's go after this North American guy. That's not something we see very often.
Yeah, it's definitely surprising to see, the LCK specifically look at, a North American player to bring into their league. I know when the Jojo to C9 move was initially reported, it was actually revealed that there was some EU teams that were interested in potentially getting
Hmm.
Jojo. And I think if I remember correctly, those were Heretics and Vitality. Maybe there's another one in there. So not surprising at all to see those two teams interested just because of what a hype player and hype prospect Jojo has been over the course of the last 2 years. But the fact that an LCK team, albeit, a below average LCK team, Live Sandbox, was actually looking to import a North American player, I think really just shows how much the league scene in general respects this player.
Yeah, like I think that's really cool and all, but I don't like being on this end of things. I like it when we're the one taking everybody else's good players. Like, don't do that. It's not so fun being on this end of things. We're not normally on it. Um,
Yeah, and
yeah,
well,
that would have been pretty crazy.
just to give a little bit more specifics on the whole Live Sandbox negotiation, it was reported that Jojo verbally agreed to join Cloud9, but then shortly after that, Liv put in an offer for Jojo to, I guess I would assume his agent. The article didn't specifically state that. I'm going to assume it's his agent. And then they had to go back to Cloud9, and Cloud9 had to actually revise their offer with more money to keep him around. So don't know if maybe they were just using that as a bit of leverage to get more money out of Cloud9. I know it's a pretty common practice in, traditional sports when it comes to free agency. Players more often than not just leverage their opportunities from one teams to get more money from the other. Wouldn't surprise me at all. It's he deserves it, and I'm just obviously very glad that he's sticking with C9.
What's interesting about this to me was that I remember Travis Gafford saying on one of his streams that his guess was that JoJo was the highest paid player in the league at the moment. And
Hmm.
that was before the rumors of, or as far as
Yeah,
I know, before the rumors of this coming up. So it sounds like there's a chance that JoJo is actually making really good money, all considering that we're in esports winter. I think
and
that's an interesting part about it, is that he was probably, again, this is not fact, but just probably the highest paid player, and that might have even gone up even more.
but all I have to say that is anyone actually surprised? This guy's been the best mid in the league for 2 years. Like surely he's going
And
to
he's
become the highest paid player, and he's a young player.
yeah, young player, North American talent, doesn't take up an import slot. Yeah,
He is the type of guy that you pay the highest money in the league to. Just
yeah.
like presumably Doublelift and Bjergsen were probably the highest paid players at the time back in your season 5, 6, 7, 8.
You could argue that it could like Blabber could have been because, he's been one of the best junglers in the league since he's been in it, and he's North American talent, and
he's under contract till 2026. So presumably he's on an older deal that's lasting a lot
are we
longer.
sure that's not, like, just refreshed recently?
No, I believe that
I don't
was
know.
before this offseason. He was under contract to 2026.
Gotcha. Interesting, interesting.
Mhm.
Um,
I was gonna say the last team we haven't really talked about, but they did make one other move, so we should at least mention it. Is Evil Geniuses? They promoted SRTTY. I don't know if you just say it like you say the letters, or if it's like
I
a
thought it was Surdy or Shirty or something, I don't know.
well.
I've definitely heard the name before, but it's been too long since I've heard it that I don't remember how to
I
say
feel like that should illustrate to the people that we don't really know who this guy is. We admittedly don't watch a ton of NA Challenger / Academy. We kind of know who some of the bigger names are, like, and ones who've been around for very long. The DSG squad, for me at least, some of the people on the Cloud9 squad, some of the people on the Dig squad, because I believe Dig was a really uh, high Challenger team in the past split.
Yeah.
Uh, but it seems that EG is also doing a similar thing to maybe your 100 Thieves, where they're going with a lot of young players, bringing up some of the guys that they've developed throughout the years. While a lot, while people have a lot of bad things to say about Evil Geniuses, at a certain aspect, I think you got to give them some respect for the investment that they have put into the development of younger players. Because
Yeah, you could separate the players and coaches from the org itself, right? Like, there's been like I feel like we've heard nothing but respect for Kelsey Moser and how what she's done with young North American talent. I feel like maybe she should even get more credit. Um,
yeah,
she should be even talked about even more, even though you do hear a fair bit about that because she's been a part of so many players and their development. Um, yeah, I guess that would be one of the sad things about if EG left. Is that a lot of their development over the last couple of years has been great when you look at Danny, Jojo, I guess Shaden and some of the other rookies that they've brought up.
and I would hope her good track record with Evil Geniuses over the last 2 years would give her another opportunity on a different team.
Yeah.
I
I
think if
mean,
you're
yeah.
any of those, I keep forgetting the three teams that are still in the challenger scene. I know Team Liquid's one of them. Maybe Fly is the other. Not sure about the third one. But I feel like if Kelsey Moser became available, she should be somebody high on your priority list. Should they continue to invest in NA talent and the challenger scene and whatnot?
Yeah, she's been doing it a while. She was with 100 Thieves for quite some time. Yeah.
Um,
Anything else?
Well, there's a couple things that you won't necessarily see just because they're not specifically written on the page. Number one is that Tomio, former jungler of DSG, has a verbal agreement with Shopify to be a substitute in jungle position. Um,
So how many people from DSG are left available? Is there any? Is there
so Fake Gods on Shopify. Tomio's the sub for Shopify. Young, their mid laner, is still available. He is the one guy
okay.
that is available. And obviously, Meech, their ADC, is now 100T. And their support is, wait, who's the support? Was it Zazel? It was Zazel, right?
Zazel was support,
Okay,
yeah.
and Zazel's on Shopify.
Wait, who was their jungler again?
Tomio, he's
Oh,
he's
right.
who we were just
True,
talking
true.
about.
Yeah, you literally
Mhm,
just said that. Yeah,
mhm.
true. Yeah, okay, so they got one guy left, and
Yeah,
technically he could still find a team.
good move, I think, mostly because it's clear that they wanted to commit to Boogie for the next year, and I think that was a good decision, just purely based off the results that they got from specifically Insanity and Boogie over the course of 2023. But when we talk about backup plans with some other teams, Shopify clearly has a backup plan with this,
Yeah.
and that's just a credit to the coaching staff and the management, I would say.
Shopify's looking like decent, man. Like it just feels like a lot of times when you get like promotions from academy, there's not that much optimism around the team. I feel like for teams promoting so many players, like even Insanity just recently promoted last year, it feels like this is the most optimism around a team that's done so many academy slash challenger promotions.
Yeah, I said this last week. Shopify is doing everything right in this offseason. And maybe not they're maybe not quote unquote winning the offseason because they haven't been making, big name signings and they're not making these splashy moves, but just in terms of org structure and a team vision, because I feel like there's a clear vision with this team and there's a clear plan. And, while it's not the splashiest of things, like they're kind of low key winning the offseason.
For the position you're put in, right? And we mentioned last week that there's a good chance Sven could go to this team. Like that'd be something that makes sense. And I just want to shout out whoever reminded us in the comment section last week that like Sven or Zazel was coaching Cloud9 very recently,
Yeah,
right?
he
There's
was his
connections
positional
there.
coach.
This was this had completely I forgot all about it, and then Revan was coaching there for some time. So just shout out to whoever reminded us of that because I wish I would have brought that up last episode. So this is why we utilize the comment section. You guys help us
Mm.
a lot. So
Um,
yeah, that would be cool. And I think if Sven does join that team, like that's a very respectable team.
mm, one other one on the NRG side of things, not a player, but a coach actually. Their former strategic coach, Croissant, was promoted to be sort of the interim GM while he continues his coaching duties. So this kind of further, I think, solidifies my theory that NRG just purely got rid of Jonathan for budget purposes, which is obviously super disappointing just because he was the vehicle that made NRG slash CLG a successful team right now. Um, but Croissant has also been a coach on this team and has also been part of the rise of NRG. So glad to see that they're at least keeping things in house, and hopefully they believe that that will lead to similar results.
Yeah, and I guess I got to shout out comment section again because I don't remember who it was in the comments, but let us or suggested that I go watch the interview that David Shynock did with NRG's CEO. I can't remember his name, but that guy. Um, where in that interview it made me feel a lot better about the move. I still think that letting go of Jonathan is going to be well, we might see that as being a very big mistake next year. But what it sounds like Croissant may have already been part of the decision making coming into this year with this roster, like with the moves to go get FBI or yeah, FBI and Ignar, perhaps. I can't say with certainty, but basically what it sounded like to me was that he was suggesting that they just don't need someone who's just going to be a GM alone, and that Croissant can fill the role of what they've had as a GM and be part of the coaching staff as well. That's what I got from it. So basically, what it sounds like is they have confidence that they won't be lacking by losing Jonathan because Croissant was probably a big part in building the roster already.
Mhm.
That's what I got from it.
It's
So
good. It's good to hear that they have, a very positive and confident mentality towards that decision of letting Jonathan go. But like I said last week, only time will tell
yeah,
if
I,
NRG made a big mistake or not.
and maybe some teams should be looking to get him if they have some
If I
GM
was if
needs.
I was any LCS team, I'd be signing this guy up right now, basically.
I mean, easy to say though. Money does talk, right?
It does.
And then the last thing, Darshan retiring.
Well, there was another thing in there, but you skipped over that. But that's okay.
Oops.
I was gonna say, if you looked at the notable missing players list at the bottom, you might see one name that was on there last week, but that's not on there, and they're not on there not because they got on a team. It's because Someday officially announced that he's taking a break for
Oh
spring
yes.
2024. Obviously, that probably is because he didn't get a starting spot on a team, but maybe
Doesn't want to go to
he'll,
Immortals,
yeah,
probably.
probably, and maybe he'll become like a super sub for summer split or something.
Yeah, I hope so. I hope that's the case. It's nice to have a break glass in case of emergency kind of player. So yeah, I think someday would fit that. And then yeah, as I mentioned, Darshan retiring officially, which is
Yeah.
like I know a lot of people are not going to care because he hasn't been in the LCS for quite some time though. But I do think it's important to highlight just what kind of career this guy did have. A long, long, long time player for LCS slash Academy. Um, Nothing but good things to say. If you had talked to any players that played with him, nothing but good things to say about Darshan.
Is it just me, or was his retirement video just so weird because he
I
had this
couldn't
like
watch it.
he
It
had
was a
this
little
he
cringy.
had this just deadpan stare the entire time, talking in this like very simplistic monotone voice that was just giving me a weird vibe.
It was weird vibes, so I'm not going to pretend it wasn't because I couldn't watch it because it was really cringy. I don't care. I still love Darshan. I'll admit I couldn't get through the video. It was really awkward and just odd. But I don't care. That's who he is. That's no problem with me. I still think that it's yeah, I still like Darshan.
Mhm.
Okay, now
Yeah, I
what?
think that I think that does it for the LCS related free agency news, and I'll try to quickly go
Yeah,
through
let's speed run the Europe
some
stuff.
of the other region free agency news that we've gotten. First off, I think we'll start off with Vitality because they basically got their whole roster locked in this past week. Number one, and I think most importantly, they picked up the former Mad Lions coaching staff of Coach Mack and this other guy whose name is Pad, I believe, Paddock or something like that. Paddock. But
I don't know.
he's got kind of Mac's right hand man. So him and Mac have signed with Vitality verbal agreement on a 3-year contract. They also are sticking with Photon moving into 2024. We mentioned last week they're sticking with Douglas. Verbal agreement with Vithio, verbal agreement with Karzi. He's back on Vitality. And Hillisang, verbal agreement as well.
Yeah, you've kind of got a Mad Lions shift over pretty much.
Yeah, it's some Mad Lions sprinkled in with some former Misfits guys with
Yeah.
Vithio in there. And didn't
Yeah.
Photon play on Misfits or something? Or
I don't remember,
there
honestly.
was some Korean top that played for Misfits. Was it him? I can't remember. Whatever.
Somebody in the
Uh
comment section could let us know.
oh, you know what? I just remembered his name. Hear it. That was his name.
Oh yeah, I forgot all about
No,
that guy.
never mind.
Okay.
Different guy. Next
Okay.
up, uh, I think did we mention last week that Trimby wasn't going to be on a team, or was that
I don't know if we mentioned that last
okay?
week.
I don't think we did, but I didn't write it down, but I just remembered it. Trimby,
It's
who was the
notable.
former Fnatic support, came out and said that he was not going to be playing in the spring split, or I guess I should say winter split of 2024 in the LEC because he couldn't find a roster. And
That's a little disappointing to me.
yeah, he's kind of been one of the better supports in the region for the last 3 years now. So to see him not be on a team is pretty sad, but I assume that a spot will open up for him come spring or summer. And unfortunately for him, he's getting replaced by June, former DRX support. So he's joining Fnatic.
Okay. Um. Yeah, I don't really have too
Oh,
many
I
thoughts
did
other
write it
than I
down
think
here. I'm just blind.
what last week you're
No,
talking about.
the Trimby thing. It's literally written right there. I said that I didn't write it down, but I see it
Oh
right
yeah,
there. I'm just blind.
yeah, it's definitely on there. No, I'm just surprised because I feel like Trimby's been one of the better supports in Europe. At least whenever I'm watching Trimby, he's been really impressive to me. So I guess I should get used to this because it happens every year where there's guys that we think obviously deserve to be playing and just don't have teams. It just Trimby happens to be the new victim of that, I guess.
hmm next up, Marcoon, former SK jungler, he got a verbal agreement with Infinite Reality, which was formerly Koi. It's kind of rogue. We still don't know what the hell that team is going to be named going to 2024, but he's going to be on that team. I think Larson's also there with uh, still the previous guys on that team, Shigenda and Comp.
Sorry to cut off, but like I just noticed the stream's dead. We're still recording at least.
Oh, yeah, we are.
Okay, good. Um, sorry, I interrupted you. You were saying?
No, I mean, that was it. Next up, Peach. He's remaining with XL. He joined, I think it was in like yeah, either spring or summer. Korean jungler actually had a pretty good year. Was glad to see him sticking around. And then last up, Targamas, staying with Karamine Corp. He did get the promotion from, obviously they were an LFL team. Now they're an LEC team, and he's going to be promoted along with Saken and Cabochard to join Upset and Bow.
Cool. I don't really have too many thoughts. The only thing that stood out to me was the Trimby thing.
And then last up, this is non-NA, non-EU, some LCK news actually, and this is somewhat relevant because we would have just been seeing this player at the World Championship not too long ago. But first thing I will say is this is a non-sheep esports rumor. This is just a random rumor that popped up on Reddit that is all based off of the T1 scrims from the last week leading up to the World Championship. So do with that what you will. But Kanavi has apparently made the tryouts on Gen G, so he will be their new starting jungler moving into 2024, replacing Peanut. Obviously,
Well,
back in the
that's
LCK now.
tryouts, right? Let's not tryouts might just mean he's trying out and hasn't made the team, right? Let's
I guess that's a good point. In all honesty, I took the post as like he's on the team now, so that's actually a very good point.
Okay, but
We don't
let's just
know.
pretend for the sake of argument that it is true. Like again, it's a rumor, sure, but let's just pretend that it is true and he is starting. I think this is really interesting going forward. That um, one of the best ways to give teams that are going to finals good practice is to put them up against people that are in tryouts. Like one of the issues that you might have going into finals that there's nobody left to scrim, everyone's kind of checked out. But if you're doing tryouts, people are like tryharding, like that could be like really good practice going into finals. And I mean, who knows? Maybe T1 got some really good scrims and that helped
Yeah.
them win finals. Just saying.
Well, either way,
Pretty
I think
interesting.
even if we are assuming that Kanavi made the team and Peanut's not on that team, Peanut's gonna get a spot in the LCK still.
I hope so.
He's been pretty damn good over the course of his tenure on Gen G.
You know. Yep. Anything else on other regions?
No, I think we're. I mean, I guess we should. I'm gonna do a last minute check at this moment just to
Okay.
see if
Okay,
we
while
missed
you're doing
anything.
that, I'm gonna kick off our quick news. Quick news. First thing is that, well, the opening ceremony. We should just talk about that. The opening ceremony to me, I thought was great. Um, I know a lot of people, or I shouldn't say a lot of people. I saw a couple of people on Twitter say that like the Mordekaiser was a little bit scuffed looking.
Wait, I
I
thought that
didn't really think
Mordekaiser
so.
was sick.
Me too. I thought it
I
was
thought it was
awesome.
cool.
So yeah, I just to me, I don't know, man. I thought it was great. I loved it. I thought it was really really cool. Also, Mordecai was kind of scary, so I think that's why I like it so much. I think it was like I think the Elder Dragon a few years back may have looked more clear and like whatever, but I just think as far as like how cool it looked and Mordekaiser being all scary and such, I think I liked the Mordekaiser more, and I think that's probably an unpopular opinion.
Really, I thought it was really cool. The Mordekaiser thing. The
So, do you like
only
Mordekaiser more than the Elder Dragon from like 2017 or whatever it was, or which one's better?
I mean, I feel like the Elder Dragon is just because that's like the nostalgia of it, and it was like the first big kind of anime, like digital animation thing they did at the World
That's what I
Championships.
think
So,
most people will say. I think most people will be on Team Elder
I
Dragon, but
but
I don't know. Mordekaiser is really cool.
admittedly, I think that's just because of the nostalgia.
Mm.
I don't know. When it came to the opening ceremony, I definitely liked it overall. The only one thing that I just found a little bit confusing was why was Rise getting played? Like, why did that have its whole like its own whole musical performance? I didn't understand that.
They did
That
Rise and Legends Never Die. I don't know. They just did the really popular ones, I guess.
Yeah, but they didn't do like a whole like big Legends Never Die thing. They just kind of had like a little bit of the song. Whereas like for Rise, they had like a whole dedicated performance to it. Like
Yeah,
Legends
I
Never
don't know. To
Die
me,
was
I
just
was
like kind of sprinkled in at the start of that whole thing that was going on, as opposed to like Rise was its own 3 to 4 minute musical thing, which I literally just was like, why is this happening? Like this shit's 5 years old.
I'm not gonna lie, this is probably another unpopular take, but for me, I don't give a shit about any of the dancing or anything up on that. Like, I don't care at all about that. The only reason why I loved it was the Leona ulti and the Mordekaiser. I'm a very, very simple guy. Like the rest of it could all fuck off. Even though I know people loved it, and I know people loved it for the music, the dancing, all that stuff. It's just not my thing. I'm like Mordekaiser, cool. Leona ulti, beast, and I'm Ezreal ulted the crowd. Awesome. I'm very, very simple in that manner.
I always find it funny, like when League has these various animation type things, and obviously, some of it's based on lore, but I kind of just naturally, as I'm not a big lore guy, so I'm always thinking in terms of the game. And I'm
Hmm.
like, dude, this Leona is ulting this full tank Mordekaiser. Like, this is useless. Like, what's going on? Because
I
I
love the
also
lore, but I'm
think of
so
the
noob. Like I don't.
like video where Leona is fighting Pantheon and that like
Hmm.
cinematic from a couple years ago, and like my
Yeah,
brain
yeah,
at the time is just like, bro, Pantheon. If this is the actual game, like Pantheon's gonna shit on this guy. I don't know. I just thought
yeah.
that
I
was
mean,
funny.
sure. Yeah. No, I don't. Here's the thing. I love the lore. I just don't. I'm not very good at knowing the lore. It's it's that simple. So like anything that like they'll present, I can't be like, oh, this is factual or not factual. This is canon or not canon. It's just to me, oh, champions, cool. I'm so simple in that way. So, anyways, I think they knocked it out of the park. All they had to do to make me happy was put a Mordekaiser in there, and
Hmm.
I'm fired up and ready to go. And then we should probably also talk about the 2024 teaser, the map, Chinter,
Yeah, they kind
looking
of
pretty fucking sweet.
yeah they teased a bunch of things in between all the games, in between all the breaks, and they obviously debuted this season 2024 trailer, which did look really really cool. Some map changes I think were definitely needed. But like the one and only map change that they made in the past 7 years is the alcoves. That's the only actual map. I mean, I'm not counting elemental rifts and all that.
Okay, yeah.
Like I'm not counting that. Just like the baseline map. Obviously, it did seem like in the trailer, some of the elements of the map seemed to be based on some mechanic that wasn't just the original map. The ones I'm talking specifically are around the Baron Pit and whatnot. The sort of the void thing that's going on with the Rift, where like you have like a void blue buff and red buff, and these random little mini camps that's in the Baron Pit before the Rift Herald spawns, or I don't even know. Maybe that is when Rift Herald spawns. Who knows? Um,
I'm hoping this is a stretch here because again, I need to emphasize I am bronze as fuck when it comes to knowing the lore of Runeterra. I just hope that this is lore accurate and that like this is the start of a story of like the void taking over the world or whatever, and like there's like some sort of lore piece coming with this Summoner's Rift change. That's what I'm hoping.
maybe.
I think that would be cool.
Yeah, but there was also some other map changes that did seem a little bit more permanent. I think the ones that were pretty notable was around mid lane and bot lane. There's kind of like an extra pathway right next to the tower. You can kind
Yeah.
of get like you can kind of be you can Jesus Christ, I'm losing.
Get dove.
Yeah,
Towers do not seem so safe anymore. Like they're making tower dives much more possible, I
yeah.
think.
And you just wonder. Obviously, we only saw a 1 minute video. We don't have any of the numbers or anything behind it. I wonder if they're then going to buff towers a little bit because of that. Like,
Yeah.
I wonder if their rationale is we want to make dives easier at like a baseline level of play. But if you're kind of going to do that, then don't you naturally have to make the towers a little bit more stronger if diving is going to be easier in general?
Maybe. Yeah, we'll have to wait and see. Do you like new Baron or old Baron?
I mean, I don't like. Is that a permanent thing? Like, I guess my question is like, do we know that's like officially the permanent new Baron? Because they were also
No, we
showing
don't.
like the Void red buff and the Void blue buff and those like
Yeah.
random little like cylindrical motherfuckers that are in the pit. Like, I don't know if it's that's the permanent new Baron. Sure.
Someone in chat says new Baron mouth a little too freaky. I think like the scary stuff is kind of good though. I'm a big fan of scary. If you haven't noticed. So I like new Baron. I really liked old Baron too. Not the original Baron. The first season 9 or excuse me, 2009 Baron was trash. I
I
don't like
just
that Baron, but both Barons I'm a big fan of, so I don't care if it's like permanent this new one or not. I think they both look really fucking cool.
I just hope that with the addition of this new Baron, we don't lose the very rare bug that you get with Baron, where it'll like die or you'll be doing it and it just like a shadow of it spawns across the floor and it just looks like a giant purple dick.
I don't even remember
Like,
that at all. I
yeah,
don't
they
know what you're
keep.
talking about.
You don't really? You don't know what that is?
No. No.
I'll find it to you later and send it to you. It's a pretty
Can't
funny
wait.
bug when it happens. It's just like a random visual bug that happens in the game, but it's funny.
Okay.
They teased a couple
Uh
other things also during the kind of stages in between games. Number one was new champion, and the new champion. We won't talk about it, too much, but it feels kind of like the AP Aphelios.
I forgot to look, so I don't even know. I meant to go watch that and I completely forgot.
Yeah. So the gist of it is the champion has 10 abilities,
Oh
and
shit.
you're basically like you're given the option to double cast your abilities. So you can press Q and then press Q again, and that does something specific. You can then also press Q and then W, and that does something. Then you press Q and then E, and that does something, and then so on and so forth. And I
Oh,
think
this sounds really complicated.
the best way that they explained it, I want to see if I can find it, just because they actually did a really good job of explaining it. Is when you press your Q, uh, you're going to be dealing damage. When you
Uh-huh.
press your W, you're going to be sort of doing some buffs, and then when you press your E, you're going to be doing crowd control. And then you kind of can like I said, you have 10 total abilities, so you can combine your abilities. So like if you do Q with Q again, it's like big damage. You do Q with W, it's like some sort of
Buff.
control damage, and like Q plus E is damage plus like CC. So there's a lot of possibilities. I feel like for those who have no idea what I'm talking about whatsoever, go on YouTube, go on Reddit, look at the champion, the video for the teaser of the champion and the skin spotlight video that explains all of the spells, because I feel like that'll give people a better understanding of what it is. It just looks really, really cool. It looks like the AP Aphelios.
Yeah, I'll have to go have a look at that. What's next, Jinter?
Well, I was going to give your TFT a little bit of shine here. They had this cool little TFT trailer where this little chunk got Steve Aoki'd. I thought that was pretty cool.
Dude, that thing was awesome. The TFT little cinematic that they made. That was
Yeah.
beast. I like that just as much as the actual final ceremony.
Anyways, don't think that. Is there anything worlds related that we want to talk about before we close out the World Championship until 2024?
uh
Trying to think if we missed anything.
no, there's nothing that's coming to
Oh
mind.
no, I just thought of one thing that we're missing: the finals viewership.
Oh, right.
Yes, there was a Reddit post for that. I posted it earlier. I forgot to write it down, so I'm gonna find this post right now. Uh, Found it. Peak viewership between T1 versus Weibo. Obviously, this does not include the Chinese streaming numbers. It's 6.4 million, which is pretty insane. I think that's one of the highest I've ever heard in recent memories. I want to say that 2018, which is another big world final, which is also in Korea, I think that was only like 2 or 3 million. and that was not, not including Chinese viewership, and that had a Chinese team in it. So the fact that we had a Chinese team in it for this one, and the non-Chinese viewership was almost double what it was 5 years ago, I feel like that bodes very, very well.
Okay, interesting, interesting.
Oh,
Um,
I'm kind of blind because I literally can see it right below in this Reddit post. It says top 5 most popular League World Championships. This was the most popular one in terms of the final
and it didn't
viewership.
even go to 4 games. Like it was
It
only
was 3
three.
games. It was a 3-0 stomping, which is the surprising part.
Yeah,
Worlds 2022, second place, 5.1. That was a 5-game banger. Worlds 2021, what was that? What happened? That was another 5-game DRX, or sorry, Damwon versus EDG, 5
yeah.
games,
EDG
4
beat
million.
them. Yeah,
Worlds 2019, unfortunately a 3-0 stomp, but that was
2018
3.9
and
million.
2019.
In
Those were both
2020,
trios.
2020 was a 3-1. Damwon versus Suning was 3.8.
Hmm.
So, yeah.
So it's just getting more and more popular every year, pretty much, is what you're telling me.
Yeah. Everywhere but NA,
Also,
basically.
Faker was in it, but also Faker was in last year's too. It's just it was in North America.
Yeah.
God, you know what I'm gonna say, man. This is why I'm worried that they're not gonna come back to North America ever again. I hope they do, but like if they see these numbers with Faker in a finals in only 3 games, and that does way better viewership than Faker in a best of 5 last year, like you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I'm a little worried.
Next up, Farik. We obviously had a brief discussion about the Karth assault thing last week, kind of a bit of a joke at the time. But apparently, he made an announcement a couple days ago saying that he's quitting all social media now due to toxicity and death threats.
Bruh,
League of
like
Legends, League of Legend fan base and toxicity plus death threats. Name a more iconic duo.
yeah, I don't know what to say.
It's just
Uh,
unfortunate. Like that's all there is to say. People are gonna hate on the whoever is the face of balance. I was talking to you and a couple other people about this a few days ago. Like Riot, or sorry, what was his name? Mark Yetter. He used to be the guy that was always putting out the patch previews and whatnot on Twitter, and he all the time you click on the thread and you'd look at the replies, and half of it was just like garbage toxicity bullshit that was just clearly just aimed as to be as mean as possible, nothing constructive whatsoever. And it
yeah,
seems that this is all just following in suit, and it's now removed Freak from the public eye, which is, I think, kind of a bad thing because, well, there was this whole controversy last week with the whole Karth assault thing and him making a poor joke. It's unfortunate that now that whole situation has kind of ruined the rest of the public communication that we've been getting from Freak ever since he became a part of the balance team.
Yeah, I won't defend his garbage take. It was a garbage take, and I'm sure he even knows that by this point. Like, it's yeah, bad take. I won't defend it. But what bothers me so much is that people like Freak should get praise for being the ones to go and do all these patch notes and stuff like that, and being completely open with the community and with their thought process behind all these changes. Like, people should be rewarded for doing this stuff, and the opposite is happening just because of one bad take. It's just pretty cringe. It kind of makes me angry. Not gonna lie.
Yeah. Next up, another rumor, not anything to do with free agency with regards to any of the regions, but keep in mind, I'll put the caveat by saying this is a Monte Cristo rumor. So, like I said, we don't know how embellished and or truthful this is, but he tweeted out fairly recently that there are currently no plans to continue the LPL English broadcast for 2024. Now, I think he did clarify this slightly later by saying that it's likely that this could get outsourced to a third party and would not start up again until summer of 2024. But the fact that the LPL English broadcast has seemingly been getting more and more viewers over the course, recently, and I think the casting and the production of it has also increased over the course of the last couple of years. This is the first year of the World Championship that we saw LPL casters integrated into the whole commentary team and broadcast team with Hysterics and Munchables. But to see them not have an English broadcast for Swing Split next year would be sad.
Yeah, no, I there's nothing more for me to add really. It's just that sucks.
hmm Next up, following along with people talking about on stream with certain things, Riot August was recently on his stream talking about some design champion stuff and his shortcomings with designing the champion Zeri. And he basically just came out and stated that Riot is now in a position where they really don't want to buff Zeri in fear of having her take over pro play once again.
Yeah, that's good news.
And while I am glad that they came out and said that, I would also say if you are if you have reached the point where we are saying we can no longer buff a champion because we are fearful that it's going to become a pro play staple and be overpowered and in the hands of higher ranked players, then
Hmm.
this champion shouldn't be in the game. You need to
Yeah, that's
you
not going to happen though. They're
I
not
know
going to delete
I
a
know I
champion
know
like
it's
it's just
not
not.
going to happen, but it should happen. Based off of everything that they've said about the champion should mean you remove it from the game, but I mean, they're not going to do it because Riot never does it. But they should
That
remove the
doesn't
champion
bother
from
me
the
though.
game.
Like if people want to play the champion, it's there to play it, and most people should just ignore it if it's not good. But like to me, it's not a problem. Like just don't play it if it's that bad. So I guess what I'm saying is it doesn't really bother me that much as long as it's not ruining pro play anymore. Fine by me.
Yeah, it's just unfortunate that we've got to this situation in the end when we spent basically a whole year of buffing and nerfing this champion for us to just end up with, well, we can't figure out the champion, so we're not going to deal with it anymore.
Okay,
It-
on the positive side though, it didn't take as long as it took with fucking Yumi, right?
I mean, yeah, but that champion was still even seeing a bit of play. Who
Like
knows? Like,
Yumi was a problem for like 3 or 4 years before I don't even know if we could still consider Yumi dead. Like she still pops up every once in a while. I haven't heard them come out and say we're trying to make sure that Yumi never gets into pro play again. Have they said that?
no, they haven't explicitly came out and said that like that
Hmm.
Riot August did with this, but
So like I guess what I'm saying is I I just think they did a much better job acknowledging that Zeri's a mistake, whereas they couldn't make that they couldn't figure that out with Yumi. So I guess they're improving, is what I'm getting at.
yeah, I mean, I guess my point or my question is what's the purpose of the champion now? Like just to be there to play? Like we
To
can't, but
have
we can't buff it. So like, what is this champion doing?
just collecting free skin money. Whoever likes Zeri will play it.
And
That's it.
I guess all I can say about that is that's just fucking lazy. So
I don't know. It's so whatever to me. It's just not that big of an issue. I think,
I
but
just
that's
think
just me.
I just think it's a bad sort of precedent and whatnot. That's all.
Okay, and anything else in
Yeah,
cooking?
last up, and it's actually kind of fitting that this is last up, or should I say last up, because apparently Deft said he's going to continue to play professionally in 2024. So while 2022 World Championship was dubbed as the last dance, 2023 was the last dance, and now I guess he's having a last dance.
Hmm.
Like
Is there any parallels?
as much as I like Deft, and I obviously love the story of Worlds 2022, I feel like it's just losing a little bit of its magic when we're doing this whole Brett Favre thing of like, oh, I'm still playing, lol.
I was just about to ask you if there was any parallels you could draw into other
Brett Favre.
sports. Yeah. Um. There's some other league ones too. Doublelift has come out of retirement.
Eh,
Mind you, Doublelift did not win Worlds, so it's not the same. But like
yeah.
Doublelift has taken breaks, retired.
No, but
Yeah.
I'm kind of like half kidding, but it's funny, and obviously to see Deft continue playing is a good thing.
Yeah, I think it's a net plus. I do agree with you that it takes away a little bit from his championship, but like you have one of the most popular players in the world, one of the best players in the world, still playing. This is good news. We take those.
Mhm.
That's it for this episode. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. Next episode, we don't know, guys.
I think we're gonna do one next week. I feel like one's gonna happen next week.
Well, there's a
I
chance we do
would.
one in like 3 or 4 days, right?
Oh
If
well,
free
maybe.
agency drops in, everyone signs everybody real quick. Like maybe it's possible.
Well, I guess
Um,
the point is, I feel like the expectation should be we'll be back here next week for
Yeah,
sure.
at the very least, we should have one more episode. If you're curious about when that might be, because we don't know right now, what you can do is you can go to our Discord. Because Jinter will always post in the Discord when we're going live, and then I'll tweet as well. So yeah, if you want to keep tabs on catching the live show, that's one way you could do that. You go to twitch.tv/clownfiesta podcast, and you can
Excuse
find
me.
us there. Otherwise, just yeah, it'll be up on YouTube when it's up. So find us on all of them platforms. Okay. Hope you guys enjoyed Worlds. We did. Hopefully, there's some good news coming out of free agency and a little bit less of this doomerism talk, although we've kind of gotten used to it at this point. I think we're
Yeah,
slowly becoming immune to the LCS doomer stuff. And I guess a positive is that it gives us something to talk about. Would love to be talking about North America winning Worlds.
it's okay. We're setting up like with all the doomerism talk. We're setting it up for the triumphant return when the expectations will flip on its head.
Like
We're
when?
scaling. I don't
Like
know. We're
2 years from
scaling
now, 5 years
into
from now?
for scaling. We just don't know how long it's going to take.
Hmm. Everyone loves an underdog story. The LCS will turn around and everything will be fine. Okay, we'll see you guys when we see you guys. This has been episode 146 of the Clown Fiesta podcast. Goodbye.